Hello, friends. We're back with the Chris and Ryan show. Today we are joined with Phil Grisedale. Phil is somebody I've actually worked with on a kind of business level for the last 4, maybe 5 years
Yeah,
now. Quite a
yeah,
while, actually.
yeah, quite a
But Phil
while
is
now.
a working man. Phil has been in a couple of different industries, in fact, over the last, not sure how many years, 25 years in the
Yeah, it's
industry.
longer than it. Well, yeah, about
Yeah,
that.
maybe don't want to
Yeah, Phil.
mention it.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, I think it's one of those things that you sort of find your feet, don't you? You don't always start out doing what you want to ultimately get to. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do until I got to about 26, 27. And then, you get that light bulb moment that you sort of decide, actually, what do I want to do?
yeah.
And what makes me happy. And I think that's ultimately really where you need to start looking.
Yeah. So there's that, and then we also have men's mental health as well to talk
Yeah,
about,
massive. Yeah,
and then we can finish off on the weight loss thing as well, and how that's going to change your life as well in a positive way. So,
yeah, yeah.
really, really good stuff, good topics to be talking about for this episode. First question that we always ask, and kind of it starts off the journey for our podcast with each guest is. Early life and how where you were born and what growing up was like
All
and
right.
how it kind
Yeah.
of developed into early
So my
career.
God, my early life. So, mum and dad separated. Dad was in the Air Force. So I had a stepfather from quite a young age. We didn't really want for anything. I wouldn't say it was the easiest of childhoods. I think that's the life's always complicated when you're quite young. But no, so sort of growing up, it was like anyone, just a fun, easy life. I remember being out in the countryside, lots of planes buzzing about. Yeah, it was quite simple, really. Nothing too exciting, but yeah, it was good.
What year were you born in? Just to
73.
you're
So
you're 110 now.
so really old. So yeah, a couple of years away from the big 50, but no, 80s was phenomenal period to sort of be growing up in. Those shit TV. Three TV channels, one shared TV in the house. Yeah, it was first TV I got was black and white, and
Wow.
we sat to mark the channels on it with Tipex. So so you had to tune the channel in every time you turned it over. You had a dial, so you turned it. I remember buying it. Me and my brother, we went halves on it. It was a tenner, and we bought our first black and white TV that we shared. It was quality.
Nice. What was the 80s like?
It was great. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Though having to sit through, your folks' choice of TV was
Hmm.
not always the great thing. And but we used to have a video man that used to come round in a van with a suitcase of videotapes, and
Oh, really?
he'd
That
come
sounds a
into
little
that.
bit strange, actually, doesn't it? That
Yeah,
sounds a
yeah.
little
He
bit
used,
weird.
he used to come into the house with a folder and you'd flip through what videos that you wanted to watch. And he's going, right, I've got this released now. And he's going, no, you can't have that. That's booked up for the next 5 weeks. so, and then he'd go in and he'd bring this suitcase in and it'd just be VHSs. And you just go, right, yeah, can we watch this one? And then he'd come back in a week's time and then he'd swap it over.
I'm
But
imagining like a VHS van, like an ice cream van, like music starts playing and people are like, "Oh, it's the VHS man," and start like
yeah,
running
it
out.
was.
Because
He used to come round. He used to have these big speakers in the back playing his music. He'd pull up, and then he'd come in. You go, "Oh, the video man's here," and he sort of come in. You choose what film that you want to watch. It used to be.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it took forever to get hold of Top Gun. Absolutely forever.
Uh-huh.
It's but the 80s was great. Yeah, it was really good, really really good. I think life was just a little bit different then. You didn't really have the pressures that the kids have now. With every if you had a problem at school, you sort of left it at school. You went home. And I think the pressures are different now for the kids. It's people can approach you at any time now with instant messaging and
Mm.
the apps, the Facebook. I think there's a massive amount of pressure on kids, and it's certainly for me, for my kids growing up. It's not saying that I want to rush them to sort of have mobile phones, because I think the pressures at school and everyone gets bullied. I think it's, it can be quite painful, but I just think with the access to technology nowadays, it's not always great. Back in my day, it makes me sound really old, but it was just easy. Meet up with my mates, go around. You wouldn't even know that they were in, because you had no way of contacting anyone. You'd all sort of meet at the park and stuff, and go out and have a bit of a laugh, get into all sorts of trouble. But it was different. It was different. But now I think technology in some ways it isn't so great. It's great because you can see what your kids are doing or getting up to if you want to do that. But I don't think it's great at all.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you on the pressures that come with the technology, because you can't be away from anything. You're in it because you've got a profile on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever it is. You're always involved in something. You can't be taken away from it. So I suppose you're right. The pressure is always there, and you can see that now, and that's I think why I think social media is one of the reasons mental health has gone up. So much, and the mental health problems because of the pressures and because of the way that people feel about it and worrying about.
There's no escape. There's no escape. It used to be that if you got bullied at school, and I think everybody has, that to a level, I was always that skinny, geeky kid that was probably never really the tallest person in the year, but maybe the second tallest person, just enough to attract attention, but not to be not picked on. So it was that sort of in between, and and I can imagine it now where people can just bombard you with WhatsApp, or Facebook, or just hassle and just it's just I don't know. I think some things are not so great, and that's probably I think one of them, because it just ramps up the pressure.
Even in like the work balance as well. I remember in my last job, even on days off, you'd still get messages about work and everything. You're trying to sit down and relax and get away from it all, but you're still like, oh, what about this? What about this? It's like, I'm off. I can imagine you.
That's been a massive change, and I've sort of seen that as I've come through work. I remember when not everybody in the office got a mobile phone. It used to be if you were on shift, you might get the mobile phone, or you got a pager. Which were just crazy. They were absolutely crazy as anything, And you still get the signs up that, well, before COVID, where in a cinema, turn your pages off, turn your phone off. But it used to be quite, look at me, I've got a pager, I'm doing really well at work, and then you got a mobile phone. And then it got into that position where it wasn't just a mobile phone; you could then pick up your work emails, and then you got a BlackBerry. And then I think it's been, everything's been sort of tagging onto that. It's been getting a little bit more. And actually, the only person that really controls that work-life balance is yourself. Nobody else is going to do that for you, because they're always going to assume that actually I'll send him an email. If he replies, he replies. And straight away that ownership has gone to yourself to actually choose to reply to that or leave it. And I've been quite bad for that over the years, that that you just let it get in the way of everything. And just probably the last couple of years, I generally try and separate things. If it's really, really important, pick the phone up. Don't rely on an email. Don't reply on a text message. If it's really that important and you need to get hold of me, pick the phone up. I'll always take your call. It doesn't matter what time it is. But I won't always check my emails. Out of work.
That's something I need to take on board. Don't always check your emails, because it can take over your life.
Because you'll never escape it, because even if it's just that quick one, it's grabbed your attention from whatever you were doing, from that moment that you were completely chilled and you were doing something else. You've looked at it and your moment's gone. And actually, does it need to be resolved then and there, or can it wait till the next morning?
90% of the time it doesn't. 99% of the time it doesn't need to be looked at. Any of the emails, most emails are stupid anyway. And pointless,
But the thing is, like Chris, sorry, Ryan, we're being in the telecoms world. It's telecoms, and it's just pick the phone up. Pick the phone up and talk to me. If it's really, really, if it really can't wait, don't send me an email or a text. Pick the phone up.
So just coming kind of back to the life story thing, what was the 90s like, and how did that progress into early job?
Yeah, the 90s was a bit of I didn't really know what I wanted to do. The 90s was the first part of the 90s. I joined the Air Force because I was struggling at school, and I came from a family that are all pretty much service based. So it was, you either joined the Army or the Air Force. So I joined the Air Force, and I didn't get the grace to get anything real decent. And to be honest, it was the summer 1990, the World Cup. All my mates were out partying. I'd signed up and I couldn't even get a drink because I was underage. So
what age were you in 1990?
So I was 17, I think. What was it? 16,
Yeah,
16, 17. Yeah. And it was just, I think if I'd gone into the Air Force when I was older, maybe 25, 26, would have been a different thing. But all I wanted to do was go out with my mates, enjoy myself, have a bit of a laugh, have a bit of a crack. And I sort of, from that, coming from not progressing on that, I found myself doing security work, then moved in, did a bit of door work. And actually, I got to this point where I thought, well, I can't just bum about job to job. I've got to, find a way and actually do something that I want to do. I've been working on this reception, so I've been doing a bit of security work. I've been working on this reception, and one thing that always interested me was computing. Always had an interest in it. Outside of work, it was the main thing that interested me. But I didn't want to do a topic that everybody could do. I sort of wanted to find this niche, and I looked into doing Unix, which was old school Linux. Some people listening to this might understand what that is, but ultimately, towards the end of the 90s, predominantly most of the big banks out there were running Unix platforms. And I'd actually worked out that if you had good Unix skills and Linux skills, topped with a bit of Windows that everybody has sort of jumped onto in the mid 90s, you could probably command another 10 or 15 grand a year. So I sort of thought, well, I'm going to sort of push into that. And I got talking to this CEO that used to come into our building from California. And he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, Tuesday nights I go evening classes. I'm doing this because it interests me." And he said to me, and I remember it. He said, Jerry Sprecker's his name. I've still got him on LinkedIn. And he said to me, he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you a chance. 6 weeks." And I had a mortgage at the time, and I had bills, and it was one of those things where it was sort of, I could sort of stay where I was, or actually take that leap of faith and go and do something that I wanted to do. Ultimately, probably not earn as much as that I was earning at the time, but actually take that risk and go down that path. And within 8 weeks, I was in California. It was, in the Bay Area, learning about new technology. So in 1998, we were trialing the first remote meter reading tower for looking to go out to the likes of British Gas. The fact that in 1998 you could go on the web and you could see how much electric you've used. It was pretty cutting edge stuff, but it was really hard. It was a really hard technology to sell in the UK because the market was a tough place, because you could have 4 million customers that could up and leave. So you got this investment in these meters that can read data over the internet. And actually, if you lose half of your customer base and they go somewhere else, and just recently now we've sort of seen that sea change in the last few years of actually people want to know what their usage is. It's about knowing where that data is, and that's taken a while to get there. And that's how I got into it, and then sort of progressed from there. And then I sort of wanted to go and work in London because I knew my money would go up. So I worked for this company. I've been at a karting event and I got poached by somebody.
What was the name of the company, by the way?
So the first one was a company called BCN Data Systems. So they're no longer around. So they were part of Bechtel. So Bechtel built the Hoover Dam. They were a massive engineering company in the States. They were ginormous. So Bechtel have done loads of big engineering projects. So they were a 50-50 joint ownership with this company and basically promoting their technology outside the USA. So in the States, it's a lot easier. So their meters are based on the outside of the building. They can put up their own base stations. It's quite a bit easier to sort of read those meters. So and then from that, I sort of went on from that. And then I was at a Carton event talking to these guys, and they said, "Oh, we're looking for a systems administrator, Sun Solaris, which is Unix." And I said, "Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love it." And then I got into that HP Unix. And then went out, helped set up their office in New York, their office in Toronto. They had a lovely little office in Malta, which was absolutely phenomenal. And I loved it because I used to graft, and I'd get to a Friday, finish work, and then go out. And New York just used to. I've never drunk so much in my entire life. New York it's one of those places that you've got to go to and experience. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Wow. I'm just thinking about when me and Ryan went to Berlin, and if you think New York's good, then we need.
I've been to Berlin. Yeah, Berlin's great.
Yeah, but if I think New York,
I think New York would be a completely different
New York's a
ballgame,
different thing altogether. You know, like Berlin's good, but that's Europe. But New York,
yeah. So Berlin, sorry, New York is it's when I first got there, and I remember when I landed at JFK. And then from JFK, when you come out the airport, you can see the Empire State Building.
That's mental.
And it is proper mental.
It must be an overwhelming feeling, you know, like New York, like.
And I remember I was a bit tired off the flight. I got in on a Saturday afternoon, and I got dropped off at this hotel in the Garment District, and it was absolutely mentally busy. And I remember the first time that I went to New York, I found it really hard, really, really busy. I did 5 weeks there, helped set up an office. And it was just absolutely crazy. But I found a really good bar. I found a really good Irish bar. And they used to take the mickey out of me. Because whenever I used to go to the office in New York, I said, no, I'm going to which I now used to call it, O'Reilly's, and I now used to call it my mate's bar, because I'd literally go, Mike, I'm coming over. I go, he's Irish. I go, what do you want? I said, I'll bring you some chocolate and tea bags. And then it'd always work on the Saturday night. So I'd be going, right, I'm getting into New York at 4 PM. I'll have a quick shower, and then I'll be in there, and I'll be in there until basically in New York the bar stay open until the last person leaves the bar.
Wow.
And you'll be coming out of there 4 or 5 in the morning. And it was, this bar was not far from Madison Square Gardens. It always had a really good atmosphere. You never knew what was going to happen. So I'd always go there. I'd have my tea in there. I'd always be sat at the bar. And I'm still really good friends with Mike now. He no longer works there, but he lives in New York. But yeah, that was fantastic times. Really, really good.
And did you feel like that was at the start of when you found the career that you were like, this is something that I could really get into?
Yeah, pretty much.
How did that lead on to whatever happened next?
Pretty much. So then one of my friends had started working for a billionaire that was starting a business up in London. And he was only 26. He was a young guy, and he was getting quite ripped off for a lot of the projects that he was doing. One of my friends was a financial advisor for him, so he said, "Look, Phil, we're doing this." So my employers at the time, they were really good. So I just used to do the odd hour for them here and there. It got to the point where I was doing, taking off the day off work, and I said to my boss at work, and he said, "Look," he said, "if you want to take time off, just take time off." And it got to the point where that business had grown to a point where I couldn't work for them in the capacity. So I said to my boss, "Look, I've got the opportunity to go over there. I'm going to be an IT manager. I'm going to do this." And he said, "Just go for it." It was really good, really, really good. Mm-hmm. And then we had the crash of 2009, so I got made redundant. And but I've always grafted. I've always worked. I've always done something. So I started up a little handyman business, and I remember thinking, well, I'm going to get some adverts out, and I set up a BlackBerry server, and I built an asterisk phone system because I knew the older population always don't want to ring a mobile phone; they want to ring a local number. So I set up some SIP numbers to come in. They'd ring. So if I didn't pick the call up, it'd leave me a voicemail, and because I had a BlackBerry server, it'd email. So I picked up quite a bit of work, but I was mindful that I had all these really good skills, and I needed to keep those skills working. So I went back and worked back in the city. So 2010, and then while I was there, they went, "We've got this really big Avaya project." I said, "Well, I can do that. I'll pick that up." So I just did all the telephony side. And then I worked out that the engineers were earning more money than me. So I'd have all these guys coming in that can sort of do the work that I was doing. And I thought, well, I'm actually going to go and do what they did. And then I sort of progressed, went out and did that. And I worked on the direct line insurance project, the Avaya implementation for that, worked on the testing. And I remember the company that I went to work for then, they said, "Oh, we've got this little bit of testing to do. 600 servers in 2 data centers, and it's just basic ping testing, 4 guys." So I went there and I said, "This is crazy." I said, "I'm not going to sit there and just type an IP address and then just type ping." So I went back to the hotel room and I wrote a little program. I gave it to all the guys and went, "Right, all you got to do is cut and paste the numbers, and it will go off, it will check everything and tell you what." And by the end of the week, we'd done about 10,000 tests. So Avaya kept rebooking. And then from that, I then got approached by Avaya to become a project manager, and blah blah blah. This thing led into that, and that's how I sort of become well and truly planted in the telecoms world, which is great. But it's always changing. It's one of those technologies that's sort of moving, and I think it's been, the changes. Me and Chris were talking about it before we came on, crying. And it's actually been I think the change was coming. It was a few years out, but actually that's just been brought forwards. We were naturally moving to that world where, everybody's got their work phone on their mobile phone. People can work from home, and people actually had been working from home. But I think, with COVID, it's brought that whole mentality shift that actually, you can have your workforce working remotely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And go for it, Ryan.
Go for it. I've been speaking to a bunch of different people about this as well, the whole working from home thing, and it seems to be split down the middle. There's like 50% of people love working from home and can really get into. They're happy to just sit at the kitchen table, or they've got their desk set up at home. And then there's the other half of the people who just completely hate it. There doesn't seem to be that middle ground of people who are like, yeah, it's okay. So you either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see when everyone does move towards that becoming a permanent thing, what happens to their actual workforce.
I think the mix is good, and we were talking about that earlier. I think I think that like the service offices are going to be a great hit, because actually have your workforce at home, but maybe every quarter get your teams together for some face-to-face time. And I do that in the company that I work for now. I go up once a month, and mainly because the role that I have is quite senior, that actually when I'm talking to the other senior guys, it's very hard to get them on the phone. Just to add that couple of minutes where I can swing the chair around and go, actually, what about this, or what about that, or just interact with some of the guys that it's the and the banter as well.
Yeah.
Having a bit of a laugh, having a bit of a joke. Everyone moans that I'm too noisy in the office, I'm too loud. So they're all telling me to shut up. So when I'm in, it's quite nice, I think we can all work well at home, but I think it's good to have a bit of a mix. I don't think working at home all the time is really good, because I think over the last 6 years, I predominantly work from home, but I've always been out going to see customers. And I think that's the thing that we're not doing. I'm not going to London, I'm not going out to see clients. I think last time I came up to see you, Chris, I think was September.
Yeah. Miller and Carter.
Oh yeah. So we went out for a nice bit of a steak lunch. And I think, that was when I just started on the whole weight loss journey, pretty much.
Yeah,
September.
it was.
Just started.
Because you hadn't lost any weight at this point. And for
No,
those who don't know, by
no.
the way, Phil is the account manager, or one of the account managers, senior guys at Invosis. It was Atrium, but now Invosis, and helps with Incovo and some of the stuff that we do at Incovo. So just for the people that don't know, that's how we know each other. That's why we went for a steak lunch, by the way. It wasn't for any other reason.
Yeah,
apart from business.
it wasn't a romantic steak lunch. We did have someone else with us as well. Didn't we?
Yeah, there was 3 of us, so it wasn't a romantic steak lunch. If anyone's confused.
So and sadly no booze involved, because I just started on that, and my coach had said to me, he said, look, if you really want to cut the weight out, really hit it, drop the booze.
Yeah.
So
what was the realization for that, by the way? Just I know we skip the step. What hit you to change everything?
I've got into this point where my missus had made a couple of comments, like just cheeky ones, but also I sort of got into this rut where I was just eating. I wasn't necessarily eating to eat because I needed to eat. I was just eating everything. I was eating anything and everything. I was baking. You know, it was getting crazy. It was just.
I was baking.
Yeah. It was just.
Extreme points.
I've always loved my cooking, and I always fancied being a chef when I was younger, but I didn't want to do the 2 years of washing up. And I remember being offered not a scholarship, but a trainee role, and the guy said, "Look, it's going to be a couple of years of weekends of washing up," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's not for me, mate. I'm sorry." I had a Saturday job in a baker's, and I used to have to clean the icing trays every other Saturday. I said, I ain't spending, my weekends when I want to go out. And actually, probably looking back at it, it's probably I've done all right. So I just cook because I want to cook. But I got to the point where I was cooking everything. I was doing some I think at one point, my son had to take in some cakes. I went, I'll do that for you. And I did some apple crumble muffins, and they were phenomenal. But it was getting to the point where I was eating a lot of food, just eating for the sake of eating.
Have you managed to work out what's made you eat so much? Like, you obviously everyone.
No, so I think a lot of it's comfort eating. And I still occasionally have those moments where I eat a bit of rubbish, but generally, I'm still exercising, and I get in between 3 and 5 sessions a week. So I sort of, and it's been quite hard with Lisa because there's kids have had a bit of chocolate knocking about. It's been quite hard to avoid some of that, but actually, my weight sort of. I'm on a plateau at the moment that where next week, it's the lockdown's back, the gyms are back open. But the gym that I go to, I always knew that I'd have been one of these guys that joined the gym that never actually went. So I'd have like 12 months subscription. I'd never go. There'd always be. I'd never go after work. I'd never go before work. And even when I was single and I used to go to the gym, I'd go there to eat or drink and use the pool and the sauna. I'd never really go and do a workout. It was so I thought I saw an advert. Some people from the pub in the village were joining a kickboxing thing, and I actually thought I'll give that a try. But I'd left it too late and I couldn't get in on the class. And the powers of Facebook, the telepathy, mind reading, this advert popped up about lifestyle, and it was. You can do this in 6 weeks. And I thought, you know what? I had a word with the coach, and I thought I'm going to give it a try. And actually just try it. I've got nothing to lose. It's 6 weeks. And I thought I'll try it. And that was in September. And I haven't looked back after 6 weeks. I signed up, and, we've had lockdowns, which have not been great. But next week we're back in there. So there's been, like online sessions, but I've really got into my walking and stuff, whereas I knew that the online sessions, I wouldn't be working out as hard as when I'm in front of the coach. You know, you're not doing as much effort. So I set myself a challenge of walking 100 miles in November. So on top of my exercising, on top of, you know, like my fitness classes. And I'm sort of taking
miles a week. That's a lot.
yeah, it's so, but now, you know, it's like Sunday I went out for a walk, and, you know, I think it was just under 7 miles Sunday. But, you know, I'll try and get in. I feel like if I'm doing less than 5 miles now when I do a walk, I feel like I'm cheating myself a little bit. I like to get a little, and, you know, you're looking at somebody that lives in a village that would get in a car and drive up the road just to buy crisps. You know, I go in, my wife would go to me, "Oh, can you go get some March? We'll go get some milk." I come out with fucking bags of fucking chocolate. And I'll be eating chocolate on the way back.
So 3 for 2 deal on Cadbury's.
Yeah, it's like, oh, all right, that. I'll take it all off there. So I've got to this really unhealthy point. You know, I'm 48 this year, and you know, I sort of thought, yeah, I've got 3 kids. I need to sort my shit out, really, and that's sort of where I got to. And the great thing about this lifestyle gym is, you know, it's not just about going to the studio and doing the classes. I can reach out to my coach for advice. You know, we've got WhatsApp, we've got Facebook group. You know, I can get advice on nutrition. You know, it's that sort of thing. It's, you know, no one's really expecting, you know, I'm not into fad diets. You know, I'm not into like cutting this, you know, bit of diet out because I can't do it. And I know in 6-7 weeks time, I won't be able to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, so I did cut back on the carbs because I was eating a lot of bread, a lot of white bread. I generally don't eat white bread now. So I quite like the seeded bread, you know, granaries. But I'm not to the extreme where I get up in the morning, a couple of slices of white toast. Lunchtime, I'd have a couple more rounds of white bread, pack of crisps and a chocolate bar. Afternoon snack, you know, maybe a bit of bread and butter before dinner. You know, and it was getting to the thing where all of these things and the fact that I was in, you know, which we'll probably come on to a bit, my life was getting quite stressful. So, you know, I was eating a lot of shit. You know, work was quite stressful. Home life was, you know, off the scale, stressful. And actually, I was heading into a place that wasn't sort of great. And I sort of knew I needed to sort something out. But actually, the actually doing something about it and going has transformed everything massively. You know, the exercise is just, you've just become this person that's really positive. You know, you know, even if you just do the little bits of it, you get some fresh air and you get some sunlight in, you feel a little bit better, you feel more positive. But and then that sort of swings in, you know, what I've been finding was mentally I was struggling massively. You know, and to anybody who knew me would never know, because I've always been this quite happy chap, always nice. I've always gone out, you know, I put this down to my mum and my grandmother and my family. You know, I've always tried to be nice. Doesn't cost anything to be nice. I've got, you know, I've never been that sort of person that's horrible or rude. You know, it's life's too short for that sort of shit. But actually, behind that, I was massively struggling. And you know, and what I find now is you know, I use exercise as a tool.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes a tool in your toolbox. So if I'm, you know, if I'm finding things are a little bit too much, it's generally when I haven't been doing as much exercise.
And were you able to identify that, you know, at the time you're like able to look in the mirror, you know, and say, I'm struggling? Or what made you realize that you were in that place?
I mean, it will come out in this, why I've sort of ended up in this place. But, you know, I think there's always been a little bit of denial that, yeah, actually, you know, I'd never admitted to my missus that actually it was probably as bad as it was. We'd touched on it, we'd been for counselling. And you know, I got to quite a hard point in 2018 where actually, you know, if I got run over by a bus, I really wouldn't have given a shit. You know, when you've got, you know, then we had 2 kids, and then our little rainbow baby came along, unplanned. The planets are in alignment, and you know, you've got to start looking after yourself, and you know, mentally, it's a massive thing. It's a massive thing, and I you know, yeah, I don't really know what to say on that. It's mental health for men. You know, we generally don't talk. You know, and even now, you know, I've got, you know, members of my family that can't talk to me about stuff. I've got friends that it's really hard because, you know, it's that whole thing with, you know, there was that thing on TV about suicide recently.
Yep.
Where are you okay? No. Are you really okay?
Is this the program with the guy's son, the popular?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The guy Fraser Fergus Crawley from Edinburgh was on it as well. There's a guy. What's the guy called? He's like a TV presenter, but his dad's famous.
Oh, one of the Kemp brothers.
Yeah, Kemp. Roman Kemp. Roman
yeah,
Kemp done a TV show. I think if that's what you're referring to.
You know, I could relate to some of that. And the problem is when you're in an uncomfortable, when you're not feeling great, you don't actually feel like you can talk to someone because you actually think, well, I haven't spoken to them for ages. The last thing I want to do is phone them up and just give them all these problems. And that's how I feel about things. I don't necessarily tell people that I may be struggling because actually you sort of, it's really weird. You know, it's not like you don't want to bother them. It's that you don't have those conversations.
Yeah.
You know, and us women, I think, are a bit different. My missus, she's always on the phone with her mates. My mates I've known for years, and we can go a couple of months without talking to each other. And we pick the phone up, and it'll be like, you know, we were talking to each other. Like, it's just odd. You know, it's just different. But actually, when you've not spoken for a couple of months, can you actually phone up and go, you know what, I'm struggling? And that I feel it becomes a bit of a problem. And you know, last couple of years have been an absolute battle. And what I found is last September when I started to get into doing all my fitness and my exercise, mentally it's, you know, become a lot easier. You know, you may have days where things can be a bit of a struggle, but generally they're not as frequent like they used to be.
It's interesting to hear how much just exercising has helped your mental health, and how much that probably fixes a lot of people's mental health is being able to just physical exercise.
It's absolutely massive. It's absolutely massive. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's really hard. You know, where I've been training for this 3 peaks, you know, I did a 21-mile walk, and I think for about the last mile I cried. Because I hit this wall, and it, you know, emotionally it was, you know, it was hard going. It was, I think I'd gone out, it was cold, it was, you know, my face was red with wind chill. And actually I got to the last mile and I was struggling. And I just had to keep pushing through. And then there was, you know, and then I was thinking about the reasons why I was doing it. And actually, that's where, you know, that's where I struggle at the moment with my training for this 3 peaks is when I do the distance stuff.
Yeah.
I normally phone up my folks and I'll have a good old natter for a little while and go. So I talk to my dad and I talk to mum and dad separated. They've been separated for things like forever, but I still phone them up and I talk to them for ages. But you know, I'm sort of looking forward to doing a Twin Peaks walk because I think there's it's like 12 or 13 of us doing it. And you know, I physically, I think I'm in quite a good shape, and I'll probably be able to nail it. Still going to be a bit of a challenge because it's still quite a distance. You know, it's but it's for phenomenal cause. But I think all of these things, and I don't know if I could go back and tell my younger self, I think I'd tell my younger self to you know keep the fitness. Get out and do something.
How long is the did you say it's 3 peaks you're doing? Is that?
Yeah, so we're doing the Yorkshire 3 peaks. So the national is over 24 hours. 3 peaks in Yorkshire is constant 12 hours. So the national 3 peaks, you have to drive. They're quite distances between the peaks, so you manage to get a little bit of shut eye. Whereas everyone that I spoke to about the Yorkshire 3 peaks has said it's quite hard going. But yeah, we'll see. I've looked over the weekend. I think the fundraising, I'm up to about 1,600 quid now,
Nice.
which is quite good going. 49 donators on there, and there's still a few months between now and July just to get an extra bit in, and and it's for such a fantastic, the Laura Centre. So the Laura Centre, they support bereaved families. So they support parents that have lost children, but they also support children that have lost their parents. So kids that are really struggling, don't really know what to do. They're there to support them, but and I don't know. I think I would have been in the. I certainly don't think me and my wife would have been together if we hadn't had the Laura Centre, because we were on 2 completely different pages. So it's probably alluded to what's happened. So in 2018, in July, what should have been an amazing day, sadly my little boy died during childbirth. And I don't think I don't think anything will ever prepare you for what happened on that day, and actually having to deal with everything from for me, it's 3 years this July, and it's like yesterday. I see everything. It's still a hard subject now. It's me and my wife can be having a bad day. I can be having a bad day, and actually it's very hard to sometimes support each other.
Because it's not just like you're having to, you support the person, you're both feeling the same way, so it's like whose shoulder do you lean on, because you're both do you know what I mean? So it's
and the Laura Centre, they were really good. I knew straight after I needed some help, and we were finding that actually there's not a lot of places to go for that specialise in child loss. You've got SANS, which are phenomenal at what they do, but I remember going to the fathers group, and you're in a 1-2 hour session, and it's an open forum, and I'm struggling to deal with what's going on in my life, and these guys are sadly dealing with the same thing, and it's a safe environment for us to chat, but it's a very hard environment. And I was finding that actually it was just a bit hard, but the Laura Centre were really good. We'd have a session each, and then to sort of bring us together, and they'd sort of get that overlap and help to sort of find our way through it. And it was they were just absolutely phenomenal.
We'll post the link to how you can deposit the money on our socials, so people can
and to be honest, I don't, I'm not looking for lots of money. I think anything, people out there have not got a lot of money at the moment, even a couple of quid, absolutely anything. But also, it's the sharing of it. There's some, it's a very hard subject, baby loss, no one wants to talk to you about it at all. It's such an uncomfortable, it's just one of those really hard. I mean, how do you talk about it? You don't, do you? It's
not a topic I've ever really heard about much.
It's like it's just really hard. And the last few weeks, people, a lot of people that I worked with over all the years have all been in touch and gone, Jesus, Phil, I didn't know that had happened. And well, actually, it's probably, you don't really talk about it, but actually it's really odd, because you feel bad because you don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable. But actually, I want to talk about it because I find talking about it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to sort of come to terms with. But I think, you know, you sort of throw that in, that's the a bit of a bloke aspect for us, because generally we don't talk about these things, and we don't, you know, I don't ring my mates up and tell them I'm having a really shit day, you know, or I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
I'm having really bad flashbacks, you know, and to be honest, I don't always tell my missus either. You know, and I think what's happened, I think, since I've been doing this fitness stuff, is it's given me that extra tool that actually, if I feel that, you know, I'm not doing that great, I just make sure that I'm doing the exercise. And generally, I'll say to Luce, look, you know, I'm struggling a bit. I'm just going to go out, have a little bit of a walk, get a bit of air in my lungs, do a bit of exercise. And generally, I'll feel a lot more positive. It's, you know, it's sort of, you sort of learn, well, for me, I sort of learn to spot the sort of, you know, the times. And generally, it can be at heightened moments of stress. Whereas, you know, if I went back 3 years ago, before this happened, I could probably deal with, I'm always worried about stuff. I've always been a bit of a worrier, but I can generally deal with things. And now my capacity to sort of deal with those high stress situations is probably, you know, is a lot different. But I actually feel that, you know, we're in a different place these days. You know, it's a lot easier to have those conversations. I mean, where we are, it's phenomenal at Invosis. They've got, you know, they've got 3 mental health, I think it's like 3 or 4 mental health first aiders, you know, and it's, you know, it's a lot easier to be able to put your hand up and say, look, you know, I'm not having I've always managed to get out of bed. I've always managed to do things. I've always managed to put a smile on my face, but generally it's, you know, it's always well hidden.
And that's the thing, it's trying to explain to people and let people know that it doesn't need to be hidden, you know. And that's the thing that I think people really struggle with, is knowing that it's okay to not be okay, you know. And you see this on social media, but how do we really get people to start actively putting their hand up and saying, I'm really not okay? Because people see it and people know it, but people don't mention it,
people,
you know.
they don't, and you know, I don't know, it's just a bit, I think it's a bit of a tough one, and I think that's probably why there's quite a high suicide rate in men.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about it and think, you know, I don't know, it's just, you know, even now, you know, talking about it now, it's just, it's hard, you know. But I know that if I probably spoke to some of my friends, they'd be going, well, why didn't you phone me up? And why didn't you talk to me? But at that moment in time, you're sort of thinking, well, you know, it's hard, you know, and I think that's one of the challenges out there, is actually, you know, and it's been amazing. I've had some messages over the last couple of weeks of people that I haven't spoken to for years going, look, Phil, just reach out if you want to reach out, say hello if you want to say hello.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and I think, you know, there is that sea change of, you know, people find it a lot easier to talk about. And Jesus, do you think I think even 5 years ago, if this had happened 5 years ago, I don't think I'd be talking about this openly, because I'd be worried about it affecting people, thinking that I've not got the ability to do my job. You know, and even the guys that I work with, it's only recently that they've known to the extent of, because I didn't want them to judge me when they didn't know me on my abilities to do my job, because I find, you know, you know, I've always had a really high work ethic, and that's something that I've never wanted to drop. And you know, you do sort of worry about it, and so I can totally understand there's quite a lot of guys out there that will just not say anything at all.
I think this is like the other side of social media as well, as we spoke about earlier, about how detrimental it is for like kids and stuff, and the bad sides of it. But the good sides of it is that it is a lot easier to put across and get people knowing about mental health and things. The amount that's been spread and the amount of positive messages that's been spread, that's been able to be seen by a much larger audience just now, is incredible. So there is the good and bad side of the whole social media side of things, especially when it comes down to mental health.
But I think, you know, it's a massive subject. Men's mental health is massive. And I think that, you know, it needs to be, you know, really promoted, because there's a lot of guys out there that you know, take after their parents and don't really say anything at all. You know, they just sort of keep stum, they have a big smile on their face, and they sort of go out and just crack on. Well, actually, you know, secretly they're massively battling things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be. Me and Ryan have spoke a lot about schooling and education and what could be done to be improved. And we had a guest on, Dina Selina, who's from Norway, I think. And like the Scandinavian countries are the best. You know, the way that they do with things.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that the UK could really use with is teaching about mental health in the schools. And I don't know if they are or if they aren't, but it's definitely a topic that needs to be spoken about, and being open about feelings and how do you communicate your feelings. You know, I think that's something that would really benefit.
And I think you know, in this day and age, it shouldn't be. There shouldn't be really taboo subjects, because everything is so openly talked about. In a negative way. So talk about things in a more positive way. You know, open up the conversation across the board. And I think, you know, you'll start to see, you know, because some of the stats on men's suicide rates are just so bad.
Yeah. Well, men over female, or the men's suicide rate's way higher than it is for female. So men definitely struggle with mental health a lot worse than females do. I mean, the statistics show that quite clearly. And I think it's a what is the word for it? You know, it's like one of these things that just guys don't talk. Men are meant to be like alpha male macho. You're not meant to talk about your feelings. You're always fine. And it's trying to break down those barriers. And that's why I think education's important, because when you when you're taught it from an early age, it's embedded in you. But when you're in your 30s or your 40s or even your late 20s and you're only saying now, you know, let's talk about your feelings, it's like, oof, I've not done this before. This is completely new. And that's why
I think if you're starting it early, it's not so bad. And maybe that, you know, some schools they are doing that, but I think, you know, there's still that captured audience out there that you know needs to understand that actually it's okay. And I think it's really hard, because you know, you've also got a lot of these guys that are in, you know, workplace settings where they're not supportive. So they can't have those open conversations at work either. So I think, you know, I think, you know, maybe it's going to take 20, 30 years for this to all change. So, you know, if you start teaching your youngsters now, it then starts to move into the workplace. And then actually it changes everywhere, because I think that, you know, you can't imagine that, you know, a group of scaffolders sometimes have these sort of conversations versus, you know, guys that are in a, you know, an office, but you just don't know. It's you know, it's like the whole thing. Pull your socks up.
I've got an idea. I've got an idea for the three of us. Something that the three of us could do. Because you just mentioned 20, 30 years, and I thought that's far too long. And I thought, why don't we try and get the government to change legislation to make it so that every company has to have a HR manager or a mental health
that's a great idea.
A mental health officer, every company. And it could be the MD of the company, but they also need to work and act as the mental health officer. And every company should have that, no matter the size. So there we go. We should make that legislation. We should apply and get the signatures, 100,000 signatures, so they'll talk about it in the House of Commons.
I'm up for that.
Let's do it then.
There needs to be a big change, because I think, you know, you can change the workforce, not the workforce. You can change the, you know, at the school education level, but actually there's a lot of businesses out there that are in that mindset. And I don't think that mindset will easily be changed for it to be acceptable.
It won't. No, it won't. But there's different things. It's all different parameters that will eventually change it. The education, the legislation, if it happens, for a mental health officer, or but just actually, all the different things, and you add it all up, that gets to that positive point.
You know, if you've got a happy, productive workforce, then, you know, you're going to reap the benefits. You're going to get better customer service. You're going to get better interaction with employees. You know, you're going to get better productivity. It's you know, it's a win-win. And then, you know, hopefully that, you know, you'll save some of these guys out there that are you know, not doing so well. Just putting that.
It's good for everyone. You know, it's good for everyone if companies can help. And you're right, customer service will improve and you'd have a better company. So it's actually in their best interest. And Richard Branson says it, you know, customers aren't the most important thing. Your employees are your most important. If you treat your employees well, they'll treat your customers well. So, you know, that's the way companies should be focused. And that's why culture is so important. And it's become so important, you know, like culture is so important, and it's having a good culture within the work environment is crucial. But just before we wrap up, because I know we're coming up for an hour now, I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because that's not an easy subject to talk on. So really appreciate you sharing that.
And also appreciate you getting me on here as well, just so I can sort of raise the profile for the Laura Centre, you know, because they've been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. But also everybody that I've piggybacked and nicked their walk.
Yeah.
I sort of, you know, they were going, oh, we're doing this walk. Do you want to join us? I went, yeah. And then they went, well, how about we do something for charity? And I said, well, and I found that really hard, because it was really, you know, and this is a classic, really positive. You know, we're all doing this walk, and then somebody suggested, oh, let's do something for charity. And then actually then telling people that I didn't know why I'd chosen this charity.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is just, you know, you can almost hear the crockery dropping them hit the floor when you tell people. So so really appreciate that. That's absolutely fine.
Before we finish, Ryan, his famous question that he always asks, I'll let him ask before we wrap up.
At the end of each of our guest episodes, we ask our guests if you could give 3 tips to the younger generation or a younger self, just anything that would make their lives better. They're chasing their dreams. What they could do. 3 separate tips.
So first one, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, you're going to learn from your mistakes. Just go out there and do it. Do something that you enjoy. Don't waste your time doing something that you're not invested in at all. So that's 2. I did have a third one written down. I did write it down.
Man has done his research.
Yeah. The only problem is I get to that point where I can't read my own writing now. I think this is one where you know, you get reader's block. Right.
No, don't worry. Maybe think about your life and what some of the turning points for you and what's helped change and the things that you think.
So this is the big one. Is take the risks. Take a risk, because my biggest turning point in my life was when I took the risk for that 6-week trial. I had a mortgage, I had a job, but I knew I could do it. But actually, there was a massive risk there that actually in 6 weeks' time I could not have a job. You know, and it's about, you know, when you're younger, that's the time for making mistakes. Ask the questions, you know, gain the experience of your peers, but you know, just try not to. It's a hard thing to say, not to worry about things, but actually, you know, make the mistakes, take the risks. And I think, Chris, you know, you're out there taking the risks, you're taking the challenges.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is, I don't know. It's just like, I feel like I've got a pretty good mindset with it, because I just try and do stuff that I enjoy. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, it's like, who cares? I think people put too much of a thing on stuff either working or not working. But it's up to, like, it's not up to anybody else to tell me if I've made something work or not. It's up to me to tell. I'll tell you if I've made it work or not. You're not going to tell me, and that's the thing. It's like people let other people define them, and I'm not going to let anybody define me. You know. So, and I think that's the same with everyone. Nobody should let anybody define them.
Yeah,
but that's just my view on it.
You've got to go out there and take the risks. You've got to go out there and try. Because if I hadn't done, I wouldn't have been where I am today, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, it sort of set me up for absolutely everything, and you know, and ultimately doing what you enjoy doing. You know, and you may not, and I didn't find what I wanted to do until I was, in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a while. I was sort of bumming about from job to job, really.
That's nearly 10 years from, when you said you were 16. That's a long, it's a long time.
And sometimes, you don't really find what you want to do. It takes a bit of time, so don't worry about it. It all does come. Or certainly
everyone's completely different as well.
Yeah.
It happens all over the shop. We had a guest who's coming out soon, Roy, on, and he never found out what he wanted to do until he was he 33? 30, like 30, 32, 33? Yeah. So it all comes at different points for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the guy that started KFC started until he was about 56 or 60 something.
He had to, because the Colonel had to look like the Colonel, didn't he?
Yeah. Or Ray Kroc, the McDonald's guy. He was 40 something or 50 something.
Yeah, but McDonald's is all about the real estate. McDonald's.
Yeah, they don't sell burgers; they sell real estate.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's quite interesting when you read about that.
Yeah,
it's massively interesting. Right,
but I think one thing I just want to finish off on is, guys out there, we have spoke a lot about mental health and men's mental health here. If you can do one thing this week, is allow yourself to become that little bit more vulnerable and speak to someone about any problems that are going through your head.
Yeah, massively.
100%.
Massively.
100%.
Because I think, if I actually phoned up one of my friends and said I'm really struggling, they'd actually probably be really great about it. But actually the perception of me actually ringing one of my mates is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, but it's one of these things you just have to. It's more of you just have to push to do it. If you're feeling like that, you just have to, because once the barrier's broken down and you're on the phone, I bet it's fine. But it's the thoughts in you. It's like everything. It's like before you do anything in life, you overthink it. It's like before you go on a roller coaster, it's like, but when you actually go on it, it's great. So kind of the same analogy. It's like when you actually just release all the stuff, the pressure on your shoulders, it will feel good. And it might not initially, but it might take time. These things take time, but it's definitely a better option than holding it in and keeping it inside, for sure.
Yeah, massively. Massively. And exercise.
And exercise as well. And look, you're looking great, by the way, Phil.
Cheers,
you're
mate.
Looking great.
Cheers, mate. I'll take all the compliments, Tal.
No, even like you look more smiley. Even from when we went for that steak, that romantic date. You know what I mean? You look so much.
That's all right. That's when I'm next up in Edinburgh. I'll be chomping through all of these various street foods that you've got for me to test drive. So,
nice one.
You need to try these rainbow rolls, man.
I saw one of the pictures pop up on Facebook, and it's sort of set me off. Maybe I do like my Asian food, so nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Good. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing a lot of that. It's really it's not easy to do, so I appreciate it, and it was nice to catch up with you as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you once again, and this has been another episode of the Chris and Ryan Show. We will catch you guys soon. Bye. Peace.